Welcome to Just Minding My Business Radio, where we are moving at the speed of God, learning what we didn't know we didn't know. I'm your host, Ida Crawford.
And I'm your co-host, Ruth Haskins.
So grab a pen and paper and get ready for information that you can use.
Welcome to Just Minding My Business Media, LLC. We are so happy that you are joining us this day. Today, we are happy to grace our stage with Jotham S. Stein. He's the principal of the law offices of Jotham S. Stein P.C. Mr. Stein has more than 2 decades of experience representing entrepreneurs and C-suite executives running broad types of companies, board members, venture capitalists, private equity principals, investment bankers, as well as less senior employees of all size companies. Mr. Stein is the author of Even CEOs Get Fired. I love it. Executive Employment Law, Protecting Executives, Entrepreneurs and Employees, and How to Guide for Practitioners. Stein's new book, Negotiate Like a CEO, is an engaging look at how all employees can protect themselves with lessons learned from top entrepreneurs and how you can too. Mr. Stein and his associates are as comfortable negotiating in the boardroom as they are litigating in the courtroom. Open your notebooks for news, views, and information you can use from Jotham S. Stein, principal at the law offices of Jotham S. Stein P.C. here on Just Minding My Business Media, LLC. Wow, that was a mouthful.
Well, thanks for the introduction, Ida. Happy to be on your show.
We're happy to have you. Wow, 2 decades?
Well, yeah, it goes by pretty fast, but no hair on my head, so you can see that I've been doing it for a long time.
Absolutely. Wow. So we read your bio and everything, but from you, how do you help entrepreneurs?
Help entrepreneurs protect themselves and their companies, their businesses, themselves, their families, the financial investments. So the book Negotiate Like a CEO describes to entrepreneurs as well as to executives or any employee that has any leverage at all, how to protect themselves when they start a business, what they should look out for when they take in investors, for example, when they sign contracts, and how that they can do their best to make sure that their baby, their metaphorical baby, their company that they started is still their company down the road when it's grown and is growing and doing well.
Yeah, because a lot of times entrepreneurs are so busy being about the business that a lot of times they don't think about the legalities that could come up.
You're right about that many times, and I can't tell you how many entrepreneurs I've had come to me. They've been forced out of their own companies. Typically, when they take an outside investment, where they go into joint ventureship, when they take in a partner, and they're not watching out for themselves, they're not protecting themselves, and then they find out only too late they're being forced out, kicked out, fired from their own company because they were exactly what you were saying. They were spending all of their time, all of their effort, all of their good energy building their company, maybe sometimes even keeping the lights open and working so hard in many different jobs with many different hats. And by reading my book, one of the reasons I wrote the book is to help entrepreneurs protect themselves and to give them the information they need before they wind up out on the street looking inside at the company that they built.
So, we've seen that firsthand from Apple.
It happens all the time. And again, I didn't have anything to do with the Steve Jobs matter, didn't advise on that, but he was forced out essentially. And then he came back and he got himself back in the company and then wound up, as I understand it, and I don't have the facts, I just know what I read, that he forced out the executive management team was there and wound up becoming CEO again of his own company, which he had been kicked out of, and then brought it to grew the company until to the fame that we know, and actually died sort of as still the head of the company.
Absolutely. So give us a couple of scenarios on how that could happen.
One way it happens is somebody takes an investor in, and the investor invests, and they give up control of the company. They give up control of the board, as an example. And so once they do that, then if there are more board members voting against them than in favor of them, they can be forced out. That's a classic way it happens. Another way it happens is the investors or the joint ventures, whoever you're going to business with, write better contracts that essentially for them, looking out for their interests and not for the entrepreneur's interest. And the entrepreneur just signs it, figuring everybody's their friends and it's all going to work out. And frankly, we hope that it all does work out, and many times it does. But if it doesn't, those documents can be very debilitating for them and wind up, even though they may control some the finances of the company or have more equity than otherwise, they could wind up on the outside depending on what's in those documents. Those are two examples that happen over and over and over again.
Wow, that's definitely could be heartbreaking. Losing something that you built from the ground up, and then all of a sudden you're kicked out.
That happens, I can't tell you how many times, and it happens even, the worst ones are not just people who financially lose their company, their metaphorical baby, but it's a friend or a relative who does the stabbing in the back, if you will, who does the force out. I can't tell you how many times I've seen that happen, even so much so that it's sometimes the person who stood up at the wedding who is the wrongdoer when a company starts to grow very big. And I write about those things in my book, Negotiate Like a CEO, and I have 59 stories that are in there that are fictional. I made them up. I was at Pete's Coffee House and I made them up, but they underscore what I'm writing about, how to protect yourself, for example. So using the bad example I just gave, there's a story called Powerless. It's 4 or 5 pages long, made up all the characters, but it's someone who gets forced out of their own company by their old college roommate and somebody who stood up at their wedding. That's an example of one of the 59 stories. I want to say there are many positive stories there, showing you what to look out for and how people can succeed and grow their business and bring it public. And there's lots of stories that are very positive, but there's also in the book, it's how to protect yourself, how to protect your company so these stories don't happen.
Yes, absolutely. It's so funny you talk about that, because I knew somebody, that husband had $1 million company and he ran off with the secretary with the money. So you're absolutely right. I know firsthand people that has happened to. So in your book, just give us a little snippet of some of the things that entrepreneurs should do to protect themselves from the door.
So when you are an entrepreneur and you're an employee of your own company, which often happens, you want to have a strong agreement with your own company, even though you're doing that to protect yourself in the future or from investors. So, and what do I often call that a professional prenuptial agreement. And what are you doing? What are you protecting? You're protecting your equity. That's another word for stock or stock options or restricted stock, whatever, or profits interest in LLCs. You're protecting yourself if you wind up getting terminated from employment of your company. You'll get a soft landing. They'll pay you some severance, hopefully, and also some COBRA payments, premium payments, so you have healthcare and don't wind up having to pay for your own healthcare. That's the entrepreneur as executive. At the same time, they're going into a company. Their own company is growing larger. When the entrepreneur is going into a relationship, if they're only bootstrapping it and nobody else, they're not doing contracts with anybody, that's fine. But if they start to take in an outside investment, whether it's from a relative, whether it's from friends and family, whether it's from an institutional investor like a venture capitalist or private equity principal, then they need to make sure they read every one of the contracts and have somebody help them. Typically a lawyer, somebody who's experienced, not just any lawyer, but somebody who's experienced in the area, because those documents are going to set out what happens going forward at their company. And I described earlier on when we were talking about some investors getting control of the company by taking board members. control of board members. That's one of the things you look out for. Another thing you look out for is liquidation preferences. There's all these different terms that investors will know more than the entrepreneurs, because they live the world of investing. The entrepreneur lives the world of building his company or her company. And if she's building her company or he's building his company, they don't have the same information that the investors have, because they don't know what the investors are looking out for. They don't know how the investors are going to potentially mistreat them. They don't know how the investors are going to throw them out of their own company, or what they'll do to set themselves up to do that. And like I said, many times things work out really well, but that's the full information you need. So as an entrepreneur, you want to be reading every contract. You want to negotiate your deals with your interest in mind and your family's interest in mind. And if you have no leverage and you have to be in a situation that you're disadvantaged in, at least go in to a relationship with your eyes wide open, so you know what the risks are.
Yes. Wow. And I think that's so critical, because I do a contract for everything. And that's only because it provides accountability.
Right. If somebody's going to defraud you, they're going to defraud you, and no contract's going to help. But a real contract with two sides that are in business, it provides accountability for both sides. And the clearer that contract, the less disputes are going to be down the road, because everybody can read in the contracts what's there. And the more that everybody understands what's actually in the contract, which is what I was talking about with entrepreneurs. Half the time, entrepreneurs sign contracts. They're just like, okay, let's sign it and go build my company, and I'll take the outside money, and they don't actually know what's in it. Right. And that's a problem, because they only learn about it much later. So I take it you're reading your own contracts, because you do a contract for everything.
Oh yeah, and I send it to my lawyer as well, and make sure that it's worded properly, things like that, and it's protecting my interests, as well as being fair with the person that I'm going in the business doing services with, because you just don't know. And nothing's worse than, getting in a situation where you got an angry person, or like you said, somebody you've been working with, and all of a sudden they see you making all this money, and then they want to become devils.
Right. That's when a lot of problems happen. Suddenly, when you start making money, the company does well, and then the people that are inclined to stab you in the back start stabbing you back. Nobody's going to want to do that when the company's not doing well, right, or just right in the beginning, right? It's only when things become successful. So, which is why, I'm not foolish, and I don't, I understand it's lawyers are expensive, but sometimes the cheapest style, and starting out, it's tough to go find a lawyer, right? Because you're just starting out your company. But it's sometimes the cheapest thing you could ever do for yourself is to hire a lawyer in the beginning, or someone else who can help you protect yourself.
Yes, absolutely. Because we live in that kind of world, and we've always lived in that kind of world. I mean, it's just more prevalent because we're paying attention now to, everything that's happening, because everything is so volatile right now. So you have to pay attention to what's going on, because in one fashion or another, it's going to affect you.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so I think that's a critical piece. So where can people get the book?
They can go to Amazon.com, and they can put in my name, Jotham Stein, or they can put in the name of the book. That's probably a better way to do it, which would be Negotiate Like a CEO. And it'll come up, and you can get a Kindle version, which is the electronic version, or you can get a paperback version, depending on your preference. You could also go to the website, Negotiate Like a CEO book.com. So that's Negotiate Like a CEO, name of the book.com, and you could go there and then learn more about the book and myself if you like to. And then there are buttons on that webpage too. You could press to buy the book. I think they take you right to Amazon, but that's another way to get a hold of the book.
Okay. Now, and also, what's your website?
So the website is Negotiate Like a CEO book.com.
Okay, we talked about some of the pitfalls. What are some of the positive things that people can look forward to in your book?
Well, the positive thing is a professional prenuptial agreement. That is making that offer letter the best you can for yourself, making the employment agreement the best you can for yourself. And if the trajectory of your job and your career goes up and up and up, or you do a good job, it's looking out for you and you're going to get more benefit than otherwise. So, and the best thing that happens, of course, if you go into an entrepreneurial company and that you get equity or stock in the company as an example, or profits interest, or if you're an LLC and the company grows and grows and grows and you're still there, then the company could sell itself and you could wind up with a very large amount to take home. Or if it goes public, that's another positive thing. And my book talks about, there's some of the stories that I talked of the 59 stories about companies selling themselves, what to look out for, what the positive tea leaves to look out for if things are going well, what happens if there's an IPO, how that works. That's also in my book on the positive side. And, even if you're forced out, that's the whole point. Let's say you're forced out during this process from the company. If you've protected yourself, and in this case, I'm using examples, equity or stock options. Equity is just a fancy name for stock options, restricted stock. If you've protected yourself, you could be on the outside looking in, but have so much stock that it's going to be to your benefit. And you can go be working in another company. I've had this happen with clients. They're working at one company or two companies later, and a prior company goes public or sells themselves, and they get this big upside and have been working there for years, and they were protected. And so they're like, this is the greatest thing that ever happened. I now have an upside from company 2 companies ago, and I'm still working at another company doing well. So that's what you hope to get out of the book, among other things. There's a whole bunch of stuff I can't describe, but if you're in employment or if you're starting a company, it's like reading the book is like almost an insurance policy to help you protect yourself as you go forward.
Yes, and that's so important nowadays. As many entrepreneurs are, it's like a booming industry now of entrepreneurs doing so many different things. And, one of the last things they think about is what you're talking about now.
That's true, because everybody thinks it's going to go really well, and or they're right in the beginning and they don't have any experience. The ones who really think about it a lot, other than the people who buy my book, who'll know right away what they should do, are the people who actually have been mistreated once before, yes. or their friends have been mistreated. Sometimes I meet people, they say, "Oh, my 6 friends all got cheated in their own companies." It happens to everybody. I just had that conversation with somebody, and I said, "Well, it doesn't have to happen to you, but so it's that's sort of what happens, because we all go into relationships hoping it's going to work out, expecting it's going to work out. Why else would you go into the relationship?" Absolutely. But this is just like I said, it's an insurance policy to protect your downside. That's what the book Negotiate Like a CEO is really about.
Yeah. So I'm sure as an attorney, when these issues come up, done the work that they should have done, and you have to represent them. What does that look like? So
we do the best we can to represent them, and many people are able to negotiate a back end, what I call a back end in the book, separation agreement. So they have nothing protecting themselves on the front end when they go into employment, but some people are able to negotiate on the back end an agreement. Otherwise, we help them as best as we can, and sometimes it comes down to us saying, next time come to us earlier, and we can help you, because if you had told me this story 6 months ago, a lot of times I say, I could have told you what was going to happen. You could have started protecting yourself or getting another job before you got kicked out, because I can tell. I may not get right at every time, and for sure you don't, but you get it right most of the time if you've seen the sort of, the tea leaves before. And so that's what it looks like. We don't try to make anybody feel bad at all. It's because life's a long time, and companies, a lot of other opportunities out there. And what I wind up telling some very successful people who always had a good life and things have worked out well, and they get fired or terminated or get forced out of their company, I tell them, and I can do this with some authority because I got no hair on my head, you are not alone. If you are not alone, it happens all the time to very nice people, to very shrewd people, to very caring people, to very smart people, of all walks of life and in all parts of the country. They get cheated or forced out of their own company. They lose They lose something, equity, money, whatever it is. And if you checked around, a lot of people are afraid to talk about it with their friends, with their relatives, with their business colleagues, with their college friends. They went around and talked about it. They'd find out a lot of people have had that experience before. They are not alone. And also that they can rebuild and they reincarnate themselves. I have a chapter, I think it's one or maybe more than one chapter on reincarnation, professional reincarnation, getting another job, or going to another career. And that happens all the time. It's very painful to be forced out of your own company as an entrepreneur, or to be fired with no notice as an employee. And it's nobody likes it. But after 6 months, overwhelming number of people are able to recover. And sometimes, frankly, sometimes they call me and say, the best thing that ever happened to me was I got fired.
I was going to say that. Sometimes it's a blessing in disguise.
Exactly. I can't tell you how many times that's true. I'm like, because other times people call me and they're having such a terrible time. And, either the board members they can't get along with, or the investors, or their boss, or, are treating them really poorly. They're trying to force them out is what's going on, either because there's some politics with a small p going on at the company, or because they're passive aggressive. And sometimes I just say, after hearing the story, why do you want to work there? Or why don't you just leave this company and go build another company? Whatever it is, something like that. And they have there's like a head check. And sometimes they say, you're right, I don't really want to be working here, or really, it's not worth it. I'll go start another company. So because so many people have that experience as well.
And a lot of times, people get attached. And even though it's not moving in the right direction, because it's familiar, they've been there for X amount of time, and they just don't move until they actually kicked out. Then they have to move. That's
true. And people are different personalities, right? Some people only want to try to succeed where they're at, and they can't. They don't do what I sometimes say. You got to move on, right? What do you want to work there for? They never think that. They keep trying and trying, even though they're miserable.
Yes.
And even though they could move somewhere else. And I'm not a psychologist, so I can't tell you all the things that go on and why that happens. I can just tell you see it a lot. And sometimes it's okay for a bad performing employee. Sometimes it's better for the company and the employee that they move on. And part about the book is, okay, well, if that's the situation you're in, at least you should be protected. You shouldn't be put out on the street. You should have some severance or separation pay and COBRA premiums and some equity, so you can transition to your next job, right? That happens at all different levels. There's even a story in the book about an entrepreneur executive being fired. The board votes 5-0 to fire this person, and then 2 days or 3 days later, one of the board members sends a text. This is the story, right? This happens a lot. Sends a text. Maybe you want to check out one of my other companies to work for. And the character doesn't understand why. He just says, you voted to fire me. And the response from this particular investor, the venture capitalist, is, what, I'm sorry it didn't work out there, but I have 2 other companies that might work out better. So that also happens.
Yes, because sometimes, like you said, that the board has to vote, and everybody is not necessarily on the same page with the majority vote.
Yeah, it depends on the kind of company, but a lot of the newer entrepreneurial companies, the board's going to vote whatever the CEO wants until the day they fire the CEO.
Right.
So usually, in the case of this example in the book, it's about the CEO wanting to get rid of a new CEO wanting to get rid of a senior executive, and the board voting, and then but one of the board members who voted to get rid of the very successful but subordinate to the CEO subordinate realizes that employee was actually really excellent, that manager, C-suite manager, was excellent. So, okay, we have 2 other companies that I know that I invest in. Why don't you consider working there?
Yeah, so because some people see different sides, that's what it is, and then it depends on the personal reasons. And sometimes, a lot of times, we bring out junk.
People get forced out of their company or fired for all sorts of different reasons, some of which has nothing to do with sort of economic rationality. So, some of it's illegal, of course, the legal kinds of discrimination, that's against the law. But there's lots of other reasons people get forced out, including somebody who might just not like them, for example,
Right, exactly.
or they want to hire their own friend. That happens a lot. Or another one that's economically irrational from the point of view of the shareholders. People get fired because they're too good, and that their boss is afraid that if the board sees or the superiors see that this subordinate is doing such a great job, they're going to fire the boss because they're not as competent, right? That happens too. Now the shareholders, if they knew the facts, would vote just the opposite. They vote to fire the boss.
Yes.
But that happens, that happens because somebody's doing a great job. Doesn't happen all the time. Doesn't even happen a majority of the time. Don't want to mislead you, but it does happen. People get fired because the boss doing the firing is now protecting their job, their own job, for another year or two, right? By getting rid of the really successful subordinate. So, and people are different that way. Some bosses, they want to have only yes men and yes women. And if you're not a yes woman or a yes man, they're going to fire you. Some, on the other hand, bosses are totally about consensus. They want to get everybody together and to have an agreement on how the company should go forward. So if you're in the wrong one of those circumstances, you want to be protected so you can go on and get a job somewhere else or start another company.
Absolutely. Now, let me ask you, I know we're talking about entrepreneurs and things like that. Do you support actual employees working in a company?
Oh, sure. And the book is about that too. It's about how regular employees, let's say regular, not non-managerial employees, can protect themselves for sure. So there's multiple parts of the book that are about that. So for example, one of them is a performance improvement plan. What do you do when you get on one of those? CEOs or entrepreneurs don't wind up on performance improvement plans. They typically get fired or asked to leave right away. But what to look out for, there's other parts of the book are about compensation plans and commission plans, how to maximize your commission plans and you maximize your personal interest in a commission plan or a compensation plan. And then there's one that's sort of good for everybody. It's a book, one of the 59 stories, and it says, "Your Offer Letter Sucks" is the name of the title of the story. And any employee can look at it and take from that.
This book sells, it covers everybody.
Well, it's meant to. I meant to, the CEO and the entrepreneur starting a company protect themselves differently than the beginning employee just out of undergraduate or just out of business school. But the concepts are the same, and the idea is that everybody should try to do what a CEO does or what a shrewd entrepreneur does. But what do most CEOs do? They negotiate their separation agreement, their exit on day one, before they begin work. Now, why do they do that? Because they hope they're going to be there forever, but they're at the whim of the board, and the board might decide to fire them. So they want their protection on day one, hence the name of the book, Negotiate Like a CEO. But that concept is for everyone, no matter where you're going into employment, at what level, if you have some leverage.
Wow, Jotham. This has been a great, and more great. So again, how can people get this book?
They can go to Amazon.com and put in Negotiate Like a CEO, and it will come up. And they can also go to the website, which is negotiatelikeaceobook.com. And there they'll learn about the book. And there's a button there that says buy on Amazon, and they can do that, whether they want an electronic version or a paperback version.
Okay, now, if people want your services to help them do all these little things you have in this book, how do they get to that?
Well, so yeah, thanks for asking that question. They can go to the book's website, Negotiate Like a CEO book.com, and there's a contact page on it. You know how there are different pages on a website. And so there's a contact page, and they can send me an email.
Thank you so much, Jotham, for stopping by. We really appreciate you sharing this information with our audience, and we're looking forward to more collaborations.
Wonderful. Thanks for having me on your show, Ida.
Absolutely.
Thank you for tuning in to Just Minding My Business Radio. I'm your host, Ida Crawford.
And I'm your co-host, Ruth Haskins.
We hope you enjoyed the show and appreciate you stopping by. Many blessings to to you and yours.